Welcome to the Inside Knowledge podcast for people with IBS. I'm Anna Mapson. I'm a nutritional therapist and I work with people all over the world from my home in the UK. People who have IBS and SIBO and need help with their gut health. This is episode 108. And today I'm going to be talking about how to avoid bloating during the festive time. So whether you celebrate Christmas or it's currently Hannukah, some things are all happening around this time of year. People are getting together, celebrating, eating more, and that can lead to more gut health disruption because alcohol, higher amounts of fatty food, and you know what? We're going to get into this. Why does it always happen that people get more bloating around this time of year? So I'm going to cover why does it happen, what kind of things you can do to avoid getting more bloated, and also some tips and positive things that you can also include. So let's get into today's episode. This time of year is very busy for a lot of people, and maybe you notice that your bloating is kind of building up from around mid-December onwards, and this can be because life gets pretty hectic. There can be trying to get everything done at work before you finish for Christmas. You're also trying to get presents for people. There's also meeting up, Christmas parties, work dues, and family events. So it can be a very hectic time, and that can have a big impact on your digestion because the gut-brain connection is so strong. When you are feeling run down physically, you're having less time for yourself, rushing around or feeling like you haven't been able to rest, plus change of routine. This can all lead to a kind of whirlwind of activity that is actually not so good for your IBS, because generally an IBS gut likes routine, it likes stability, it likes regular calm meals, slow eating, no alcohol, movement. And those are the things that go out the window when we're really busy, right? So maybe you're having less time for yourself, less time to do the things that you know actually help your gut. It doesn't mean that you are failing if you find your digestion playing up at this time. I guess I wanted this episode to come with that as a warning. First of all, it's not about your fault, you're doing too much. It's like life is really busy, things are happening, and there's a lot of social pressure to eat with other people, which can be incredibly hard when you have a sensitive gut. So there's that, the busyness. Maybe you're also finding change in your digestion happens over time. So it might be over a couple of days that you notice it, not necessarily just one meal that's going to ruin your digestion. It's more that the whole period is upsetting your gut. Really like about this time of year though is that most people stop and take a rest. Obviously there are some professions where people do need to keep working, like doctors and nurses in our emergency services and key core workers, right? So they unfortunately don't get a break. But unlike the summer holidays where people are taking time off from work at different times, going away at different times, Christmas is one of those times in the UK, at least where I'm based, where everybody stops, we have a little break, and life just seems to pause for a while. And that can be really beneficial, just to allow the slowdown and feel like you can relax into it because everybody else is slowing down as well. Now, what that might mean, though, is that you are more sedentary than before because it doesn't feel as socially acceptable to be going off to the gym over Christmas, or to be doing your normal routines, which maybe involves doing yoga first thing in the morning. Like, life changes because you are settling into, a different family time at home. But sometimes that means, you're more sedentary, spending a little bit more time maybe watching TV, playing some games with the kids, just sitting down, and maybe also traveling. So long time in the car or on trains to visit relatives. So this can lead to slower motility and changes in your gut because if you're sitting down for a long time, maybe doing less exercise or less walking about than you normally do, it could mean that gas is passing through you more slowly, leaving you feeling more bloated. Maybe also you are changing your eating patterns. So you're skipping breakfast because you're going to have a big meal later. I know a lot of people I work with say they do this. Or perhaps you don't really have a big lunch, you're grazing, you're going to places where there's like a buffet and there's food out, but you're not having the same steady meal pattern that your digestion has been used to. Maybe also you're changing your routine and eating at different times of the day, maybe eating later in the evening than what you would like to do because you're eating with relatives or family members, going to parties, that sort of thing. That can also in itself lead to sometimes more stress. So although, yes, we don't have the work pressures and life can slow down and stop for a while, for some people that can feel quite stressful because you have to spend time with people that maybe it's not easy for you to spend as much time with. So that, the social dynamics of things can be stressful for a lot of people. And maybe that gut-brain interaction, just switching on your stress levels longer term, can leave you feeling quite bloated, because when you are stressed, your body does not digest food as well. Your gut motility can slow down. Maybe if you're traveling, sometimes you feel more constipated. Also, if you are holding on to a lot of anger or stress or worry, sometimes that can also slow down your gut, or it can also do the opposite and really speed it up and create more loose stools and faster transit time. When you are traveling as well, maybe you're staying in other people's houses, trying not to go to the toilet in their house. That can be quite common. People don't like to use the toilet away from home. So those kind of things can also lead to a buildup of gas, feeling very bloated. So just to recap on what it is I mean when I say bloated, getting bloated is normally a combination of having excess gas that's feeling big, like your stomach is distended, it's expanding. You may hear noises like the gurgling gas moving through you. Your stomach might not look much bigger, but you feel very sensitive, and that is the feeling of being bloated, which is different from the distension that you can see, the expansion. So those are two different things, but ultimately people normally just say, I feel really bloated. It can often be also linked to constipation. So a slower transit time if you haven't been to the toilet every single day because you've been traveling, you're staying in other people's houses, you're eating different foods. This slows down your gut. Therefore, everything's getting trapped and backing up. So that can be another common cause of bloating around this kind of time of year. So even if you eat the most perfect diet that you know suits your digestion, with all of those things going on, it's no wonder that you also get a bit bloated. It's not necessarily that you aren't doing the right things. You probably are. It just means that this time of year, there's extra stuff going on that can also affect your gut. And we haven't even got onto alcohol as well, because a lot of people I work with do drink, and I would say underestimate the impact that alcohol has on their gut. So having a few glasses of wine may upset your gut for, 1 to 2 to 3 days even. It is not as simple as just as soon as you're, ready to drive, then your digestive impact of drinking is gone. Like, it can last for a number of days. And so the more times you're drinking over this period, then the more likely it is that you will get some digestive upset. If we think specifically about foods that may be upsetting your gut or triggering digestive bloating, then things that are typically around this time of year, dried fruits, mince pies, Christmas puddings. These are dried fruits are very high FODMAP foods because the sugars are very concentrated, and that can draw water into the gut, create gas and bloating, feeling of just an upset stomach. So we've also got like maybe more high fatty foods than you might be used to. So things like crisps and rich gravies and sauces, like creamy puddings. Those kind of things are around a lot more than they would be at other times of the year, and maybe are part of your picture of triggering. It's not necessarily just one food. I mean, it very rarely is one food that is going to be the cause of the bloating. It's more a digestive pattern. And that is sort of what I want to come on to. What can you actually do about this to try and help yourself and try and feel better? Some of the things that really help are maintaining the fruits and vegetables that you know you can tolerate, because alongside eating more of the high fat foods, the rich foods, the chocolates, dried fruits, nuts, and all of those things, often people are reducing their standard carbohydrates and in the forms of starchy vegetables like maybe carrots and parsnips, things like potatoes. So you're reducing some of the things that you know work well, as well as introducing foods that potentially could be high trigger foods. So we've got a pattern of stopping the helpful things like walking, exercise, time for yourself, sleep maybe, and increasing the foods that we know are not so good, and also drink. So let's think about what you can do. So the sort of non-negotiable things that I would really recommend you maintain throughout this whole period of New Year, Christmas time, Hannukah, whatever it is you're celebrating, is to eat regularly, 3 meals a day. Now, remember, my previous episode was all about why you need 3 meals a day. This is because it keeps your gut moving, it maintains your fiber targets, it maintains your protein targets. And this is very hard to do if you are only eating 1 or 2 meals a day. Also, it stops us overeating because we're starving, because we didn't eat breakfast and now we're having a massive lunch and then we're not eating again in dinner time. So try to be consistent, try to keep a regular routine. A little bit of gentle movement every day is also really helpful. Be the one who offers to nip to the shops and walk instead of driving. Anything you can do to keep yourself moving. Take the dog out for a walk if someone's going. Just get a little bit of exercise, because it really helps to settle your digestion. When you're walking, quite often, burps will come up, farts will come out. I've seen on Instagram and TikTok recently, people call it a fart walk after lunch. And you just go out and get things moving and allow a little bit of gas to escape, whatever you call it. And I think, it's nice that people are making a fun thing out of it, but it doesn't really matter. The main thing is that you are moving, because it just helps the gas to escape. And if the gas can escape, then it's not trapped and stuck in you, which can really add to the bloating. So that's 2 things. So I recommend you eat regularly, don't have massive long gaps, and save yourself for a big lunch. Try to still eat a breakfast that contains some fiber. So oats is especially really, really good. Making sure you're still getting your fruits and vegetables. Walking, ideally you want to get 30 minutes every day, and this is to help yourself get some exposure to daylight as well, if that's possible. Even in this very murky, dark time of the year, the middle of winter, when the days are shortest, the daylight outside that we can get at some point is still going to be beneficial for helping to set that sleep-wake routine in your brain. Now, daylight really helps us know where we are in time. Like, humans need to be reminded, okay, this is day, this is night. And the way we do that is through movement, exposure to daylight, eating, and activities. And then in the evening, we need to start slowing down, eating less before bed, and then winding down and trying to be dark and cooler, and just allowing our body to get back to sleep. Right, the third non-negotiable thing I want to mention is drinking water. So keeping up your fluids, making sure that you are still well hydrated. If you're spending a lot of time indoors, especially with the heating on, it can get quite drying. So it's good for your skin, and it's also good for your brain health. As soon as you start to get a little bit dehydrated, your brain can really struggle. So people feel like they get more brain fog, they feel a bit tired, maybe more irritable. Drinking water does really help with this. So it also helps to flush through your body if you have been drinking alcohol, and to replenish, keep everything moving. So those 3 things are really helpful sort of daily non-negotiables. And then what you can focus on adding to each meal is some complex carbohydrates. So that would be rice, potatoes, oats, slow burning carbs. If you get on well with wheat, whole grain bread and pasta is another good source, but I know a lot of people struggle with wheat. But if that's not a problem for you, then by all means include that too. We want to try and get some protein in each meal, and that includes meat, fish, eggs, yogurt if you're okay with lactose. Tofu is another really good source of protein. So we want to make sure a little bit of protein, and that is to help balance your blood sugars. When you've got a lot more sugary foods coming in, which we do maybe around this time of year, parties and so on, then we want to make sure that just we're balancing it with some proteins. All right, I'm not saying don't have the sugary stuff, just make sure that you are eating some of the things your body needs as well. And then focus on the fruits and vegetables that you can tolerate. So whether it is 5 things that you can keep in your diet, like maintain those over Christmas. Don't drop them out. If you are already okay with 20 different fruits and vegetables, then try to keep up that variety, like add to your plate. Offer to bring a dish with vegetables in it. If you're going to a party, you can have crudités, like raw carrot, cucumber, celery, those kind of things with dips. That's another way to get some vegetables in, as well as warm salads, like roasted vegetable salads with some couscous and some proteins, things like that will help you keep up the motility in the gut. And also just make sure that you're getting some of the nutrients that you need to really help you with your immune system support, with your muscle strength, everything over this festive period. If you get to a certain point in the day, often 3 or 4 o'clock, and you just think, oh my goodness, the bloating has really started, what kind of things will help you in the moment? Well, peppermint capsules may help. They don't always provide relief, but for some people they can. So you can get enterically coated peppermint capsules. That means they only open in the small intestine. They should not open in your stomach. They should not cause reflux when you're taking them. If you have got reflux from taking peppermint oil capsules, it means they're not enterically coated. So check. You can get these in a pharmacy, like in a chemist, anywhere. But peppermint tea and ginger tea can also be very soothing. Ginger's quite good if you're more like nauseous, sicky feeling, and peppermint is kind of good for easing digestion and cramps, that sort of thing. So herb tea's very good, and also the warm water can be very soothing. Also, a hot water bottle can be very good if the pains are strong. So making sure that you bring a hot water bottle wherever you're going if you feel like that is going to be helpful for you. You can also, as I mentioned before, get out and walk. Try and move your body if it's building up and feeling quite bad and the bloating is strong, then a little bit of movement might help. If you feel like you can't leave the house, but you could sneak off somewhere and just spend a few minutes on your own, then a little bit of yoga might be also helpful for calming. Doing the deep breathing. Diaphragmatic breathing is very soothing for your gut. So that's like the belly breathing. But also any yoga poses where you put your bum up in the air, you're stretching yourself out and just twisting your body, moving your abdomen, because it does allow the gas to escape and kind of keep things moving. If your bloating might be because you are constipated and you haven't been to the toilet for a few days, then don't be afraid to use laxatives. The key is to not wait, ideally, till it's built up, because that really can make it much worse. And then when you do take the laxatives, you're more likely to get cramping, pain, because the body is so full of stool and it's got to then push it out. And that can be really sore. So if you know that you get constipated every time you go away, then consider taking a sort of more gentle laxative, something like the Macrogel, Movicol or Laxido type ones, which create more of a gel inside your gut. And they help very gently. They're not stimulant laxatives, so they're not going to suddenly leave you on the toilet. They just help keep things going and just might reduce the bloating by keeping a regular bowel pattern. And that can be very helpful. So not letting it build up for 4 or 5 days, making sure you do go to the toilet as well when you feel the urge to, even if you are in someone else's house. Thing I just wanted to mention around eating with other people and having to go to parties is your exposure to certain foods that you have a worry about. You may have decided to go gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free in order to control your symptoms. Whether that is working for you or not, you can decide, but you may be very worried about exposure to certain levels of lactose in foods or gluten in foods. For people with IBS, normally a small amount of exposure to wheat and to dairy is tolerable and can be managed. So, for example, lactose is very low in cheese, in butter, in chocolates even. The actual amount of lactose is very low. So it's unlikely that a small amount will be the trigger of your symptoms. I'm not talking about people who've got dairy allergies. Obviously, they 100% need to avoid it at all times. If you're lactose intolerant, you may be able to have a small amount of dairy-containing foods in the short term and not panic. And that doesn't mean that you are fine with dairy and you should have a latte and then loads of custard and some ice cream. That's different. So trying to explain it to people that sometimes it's the portion sizing that is the trigger for people with IBS. It's not an all or nothing. Because people can sometimes get quite confused. If one day you're eating something that has cheese in it, and another day you're saying, oh, I can't have too much creamy sauces, I can't have too much lactose. It's quite difficult to understand because it's not the same as celiac disease where you are in or out on the gluten. So, for example, with gluten-containing foods as well, for people with IBS, normally an exposure to some level of gluten is not going to be a problem. And I'm not, again, saying have a huge plate of pasta and eat tons of wheat 3 times a day for breakfast, lunch and dinner. But maybe if you have a small amount of food that does contain wheat, it's not going to be the biggest trigger that you have been worrying about. It's normally a combination of the situation, your lifestyle, like how you've been managing it in terms of routine, and other food patterns rather than a single food that is your particular trigger. And that's not just at Christmas, that's all the time. It's nearly always the overall approach to eating that is the problem for bloating rather than one individual food. I hope that has been helpful to show you a few things that you can do and things that you can be in control of, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, to try to manage your gut. Try to avoid the bloating. One thing to finish off with is just try to stay calm. That is one of the biggest challenges for people with IBS, is to create calm in your mind that can translate into calm in your gut. Whether it's rushing around being really busy, dealing with family dynamics, all of these things can be more easily managed if you have some space in your brain. If you are able to find some quiet time for yourself, to center yourself, to feel like resilient. If you don't have that kind of calm base, it's quite hard for your digestion to then cope with things that come your way that may upset it more. For lots of support with IBS breathing, listen to episode 48, where I go through different breathing exercises, some supportive ways that you can calm down your nervous system. Listen to episode 68 for more on alcohol and the gut. And I go into lots more there about which drinks are the best and how to manage it if you're on the low FODMAP diet or just generally for people with IBS. So take a listen to those too, and I hope that you have a very good festive time over the next few days. And I will be back with another episode next week about how to set New Year's resolutions if you have a sensitive gut. Thanks very much for listening to this episode of the Inside Knowledge podcast. Better digestion for everyone.